How's it going, guys, and welcome to another entry in our Community Cast series. In this game, we're going to have a showdown between Salty Dwarf, who, you guys probably guessed, is going to be playing the Dwarves, and he's going to be facing off against Haza Slaga, who's going to be playing the Wood Elves, helmed by a Glady. So let's jump right into this match, guys, and have some fun. So for the Dwarves, in the front line, they do have an entire core of Dwarf Warriors who are going to be supporting the more elite Longbeards. And I really like this pick from Salty Dwarf. In this matchup, you don't really need armor piercing in the front line because one of the more staple infantry for the Wood Elves, the Eternal Guard, only have 40 armor. And on top of that, having these shields is also very valuable. Although it looks like his opponent didn't really bring any traditional missile units. He does have a couple Hawk Riders, as well as a Glady here, and I think that's pretty much it for missile units. But nonetheless, the Hawk Riders still do have decent missile attacks. They have 140 range and 38 missile damage, not the best armor piercing values, but in a very long game, sometimes it can come down to your Dwarves just getting kited and just kind of, dragged around. So having that kind of a shield is very, very valuable in my opinion. So that's pretty much it in the front line. In the secondary line for the Dwarves, they do have a couple groups of Quarrelers, and these guys are an extremely solid pick. They have shields themselves, so when they're trading with Glade Guards and Deepwood Scouts and Hawk Riders, or pretty much any other missile unit, they often outlast them and are very cost effective. So he does have two groups of those, I think. In the middle, he does have a group of Iron Drakes with the Trollhammer Torpedoes. So this is something I probably normally wouldn't think to bring against the Wood Elves, but again, if he is facing off against a dragon, or I think Orion is actually considered a large target, so I wonder if these guys would be really good against Orion. That would actually be pretty funny to see. But I feel like they'll do some pretty good work against the dragon. The one thing you typically have to watch out for, though, is if the Wood Elves have a bunch of missile units, if they have like Glade Guards or Deepwood Scouts or Way Watchers, because one or two groups of Way Watchers can really just melt these guys, and they don't really come with too many models. Yeah, it looks like only 21 models. But I'm pretty excited to see how he does with these. So for his Lord, he does also have a Rune Lord. So the Rune Lord isn't a bad pick. I think he does have some magic resist. So he has 55% magic resist atop his anvil. He does have 35% missile resist and also physical resist. So this guy is just going to be an absolute tank against missile fire. So if the Wood Elves, for example, had brought a bunch of Glade Guards with Starfire Shafts, or even Way Watchers, he would be fairly durable and definitely would be a hard target. Because, 55 here, he does have 35 here, and 25 for physical. So that's pretty sturdy, guys. For his runes, he does have the Master Rune of Negation for a 44% ward save against all damage. And the Master Rune of Wrath and Ruin does actually slow targets now, so it's definitely quite a bit better than it was before. And let's see what else he's got. So in the back, he does have the Dragonback Slayers, who are pretty much a staple in this matchup because they do have anti-large, but the more important thing is they're really good at kind of fending off harass because they do apply a speed debuff. So whenever they hit anyone, it's going to make them vulnerable to fire. So if somehow, some way, he gets his Dragonback Slayers up here, kind of attacks some troops, and then shoots them with a flame cannon, I think he has a flame cannon. Yeah, he does. They're going to take a little bit extra damage. So that's definitely some fancy stuff. He does have a bolt thrower here on the far side, which you can see is going to be trying to shoot at that Glade Lord, but often I found it doesn't really hit these type of units very well. If he's able to shoot at the Hawk Riders, I think he could probably get some pretty good value from this bolt thrower. Another group of Slayers, he does also have a Thane right here. So the Thane has the Tormentor Sword, and he does also have a Rune. So the Thane has the ability to carry a Rune now. 5 melee attack and 4 leadership, definitely not bad. And also the Tormentor Sword. So that's pretty much it for the Dawi army. You can see on the far side, he is being pressured by some Way Watchers. So the Way Watchers are, a pick to actually like quite a bit. They do have 190 range, so they can outrange most of the Dawi missile troops who have 160 range on the Quarrelers. So definitely a decent pick, and they do have armor piercing values and also don't do magic damage. So their missile attacks aren't going to be mitigated by the natural 25% resist on all of the Dawi forces. You can also see the Wood Elf player does have two groups of these Wild Riders with shields. I think only one has shields, so it looks like he actually did put the shielded group ahead, so hopefully they'll be taking some of that missile fire. You can see that the Salty Dwarf is going to be posturing his Slayers right here to hopefully intercept these guys, but he does have a very big back line. You can see he has a lot of vulnerabilities, this big open space right here, so he probably wants to peel these Slayers down here to kind of intercept these guys, but the problem is there's also a Dragon intercepting and some Hawk Riders. So Hawk Riders are a pick I really like in this matchup as well. Granted, these guys are in a little bit of a dangerous situation. They're just trying to shut down that Flame Cannon, which is probably going to be roasting some of these Eternal Guard. Let's check it out. Come on, get there. Nope, just barely missed. But he was trying to shut that down, but unfortunately he does kind of get snared right here. So the Dwarf Thane does have the Tormentor Sword. I'm not sure if he's going to pop it yet, but it looks like these Hawk Riders are just getting massacred by the Slayers, even though they're partially netted. I definitely like that attempt by the Wood Elf player to try and net these guys down, but it looks like the Rune Lord as well as the Thane and the other guys are able to kind of finish this guy off. You can see the Tormentor Sword now does get popped, but it looks like some of them took off and some of them got stuck on the ground. The Tormentor Sword definitely has some very buggy interactions. Over here on the far side, you can see that the Quarrelers are getting engaged on by the Wild Riders, and a very, very nice Master Rune of Wrath and Ruin is going to be dropped on these guys, which will slow them down. I don't know if there's another group of Slayers nearby. Looks like there was, and they actually were able to kill a group of Hawk Riders. But these Quarrelers are back online, and they're going to trade pretty efficiently with the Way Watchers, because the Way Watchers, of course, don't have much armor. But a very nice charge from the Wood Elves coming downhill right here with these Wild Riders. And even though Wild Riders don't really have massive armor-piercing values, I definitely think it's a must to bring, like at least one group. The Dwarves, despite the fact that they do have a couple snares now, they have the Tormentor Sword as well as the Master Rune of Wrath and Ruin and the regular Rune of Wrath and Ruin, which apply slows. They're still very weak to kind of a, skirmishing, well not skirmishing, but like cab charges and high mobility tactics. So the Coilers do get rode down a little bit right there, but you can see the Salty Dwarf has secured his center pocket. You can see he does have some Coilers as well as his Bolt Thrower back online. And they're really kind of doing a ton of damage to these Way Watchers, and I'm pretty sure the Wood Elf player only brought one group. So it looks like the Wild Riders are just going to be cycle charging around, getting a nice little engagement here on these Iron Drakes. In the front line, it looks like the Dragon here is going to be jumping on the back of some of these Longbeards, but thankfully for the Dwarf player, these guys do have immunity to Psychology, which is really, really good for how cheap they are. So they should be able to kind of hold this Dragon at bay. You can see the Eternal Guard in the front line are trading very evenly. However, the Eternal Guard do have a bunch of chevrons put into them. It looks like they have double silver, and I think the other ones do have double silver as well. So in the front, some of these Slayers are going to be intercepting to try and help bolster the front line against this Dragon. In the back, you can see the Bolt Thrower is back online, and it looks like it's shooting at these Way Watchers. Man, look how much value he got out of these Coilers. I mean, they took multiple charges, they took a bunch of volleys from these Way Watchers, and they were still able to outtrade them, largely probably due to their shields. So it looks like these Way Watchers are probably going to shatter and break off the battlefield here in a moment. So the Thane and the Rune Lord in the back have done pretty well for themselves. However, the Wood Elves do have some routing units. So you can see these Hawk Riders coming back. I definitely would have probably tried to isolate these Coilers rather than going after the Iron Drakes, because the Iron Drakes will do some okay damage against the Dragon, but he can easily outmaneuver there. Looks like a really nice breath attack coming in from the Wood Elf player, so very well played there. It's going to be roasting some of these Dragonback Slayers, as well as these, not Eternal Guard, but Longbeards down here. So pretty good targeting, and I think it does magic damage to the breath, but it still does so much damage, it's definitely worth using. So the Dragon right here is going to be landing and tearing into these Coilers, doing some massive damage. And he actually does, so in his melee attacks, he does do magic damage as well, so there is going to be that 25% mitigation. But 25% off the 440 is still, it's not that bad. So right now, it looks like the Branch Wraith and the Dragon are going to be going after the Rune Lord, and the Rune Lord is pretty tanky. He does have 120 armor, 52 melee defense, but he really doesn't have great combat stats aside from that in terms of his offense. His melee attack is decent, I guess, for a Legendary Lord, but his weapon strength is very low. So you can see this Dragon is kind of bullying him a little bit, but it looks like he's actually getting a few attacks in there on that Dragon. And the Dragon, let's see, his melee defense is 40, so definitely not bad. So in the front line, you can see the Slayers have actually helped to buckle this this front line of Eternal Guard, and it's pretty interesting. Slayers are actually really good in the front line versus the Wood Elves. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it, because if the Wood Elves do bring a bunch of missiles, the Slayers can go down very quickly. But let's say, for example, like in the early days, when the Wood Elves first came out, a lot of Dwarf players were just massing Slayer armies, so you would just see like 10 Slayers just charging into the Wood Elves, and it's actually pretty efficient. So the Glade Lord right here is going to be landing and trying to get away, because you can see a bunch of these Slayers and the Rune Lord and these other guys are going to be chasing him down. And he's definitely very lucky that the Salty Dwarf did not have his Tormentor Sword up, because that would have been really bad to get caught right there. So you can see this Bolt Thrower is just shooting point blank at some of these guys. And I wonder how many kills it has. Probably not too many. It has 20 kills. That's not too bad. And I wonder if the Flame Cannon, yeah, the Flame Cannon looks to have been completely shut down. These Wild Riders are just kind of having a field day. These Dwarf artillery crews are quite brave over here, but they're definitely not going to be able to hold against Orion's buddies. So this Branch Wraith is down here providing that is it called Mark of the Wild, or is it Howl of the Wild? It's been so long since Mortal Empires has been around, or since we've had access to these old factions. But Call of the Woods is going to be providing that melee attack, making these Eternal Guards a little bit more viable in melee. You can see it puts their weapon strength, or their melee attack, up to 34. But a very nice Rune of Wrath and Ruin from the Salty Dwarf is going to be peppering these guys down. And you can also see that these proud Longbeards are going to be supporting their Lord, and with that plus 60 armor, they're at 160 right now, which is pretty crazy. However, I think there is some sort of a threshold or a cap where it becomes like exponentially less efficient. So up in the high ground here, well, not the high ground, literally the air, you can see this Glade Lord is going to be flying above, looking for an opportunity to probably go after this Lord right here. Because if he can take that Lord out, he should have some decent, kind of opportunities to get some good cycle charging with the Dragon. But it's very risky. With that Thane down there, the Tormentor Sword does recharge, but I believe it only recharges when he's in melee, so it does take some time. It's not like a hard recharge where it's just going to reset after like 60 seconds. He has to be fighting the entire time. So the Thane in here, as all dwarves know, they're getting in that mean Bruce Lee karate, doing some karate kicks on these guys. Well, right now he's not, but he did a moment ago. A very nice Prey of Anathrama from the Wood Elf player is going to be snaring down these Eternal Guard, or I think these Slayers right here, who are probably doing some decent damage to him. But you guys can see, even these Eternal Guards, they have really good armor-piercing values, and it looks like the Tormentor Sword was popped, but it didn't get the Glade Lord. One of the issues I've had with the Tormentor Sword recently is, like, I've had, like, Malekith on the ground, for example. And I've had him surrounded, I've used the Tormentor Sword, and he's still able to get up in the air and take off. It's so frustrating. I really hope that Creative Assembly is able to adjust that, but it seems like even if you snare someone with Effigy of the Git, I remember that happening quite a bit, like using it against like Karl Franz, and he's able to pull back up into the air. I really hope they fix that. So over here on the far side, you can see the dragon is kind of out in the periphery, and this is definitely pretty good. He's able to kind of push back those Iron Drake torpedoes, which were a pretty good answer to him. He probably also wants to just kind of scour the battlefield for things like on the flank. So over here, he does have a group of 14 Quarrelers, so he could go take those guys out, but it looks like he had a really good rear charge opportunity on that Rune Lord. He's getting relatively low. He only has 1,000 HP. You can see his leadership is 23. And pretty much a Lord from any other faction would probably break, but man, the Dawi have such good leadership. So right now, he's down to about 800 HP. He is taking anti-large damage here, but you can see the Dwarf Thane just fighting tooth and nail to protect his Lord, and he's still very healthy. And even if the Dwarf Lord goes down, the Dwarves are one of those factions that aren't affected like as bad as other factions because their base leadership, even on their fodder units like Dwarf Warriors and Miners, is pretty decent. So over here, there is a very big pocket of Angry Slayers and Dragonback Slayers, as well as Longbeards. We're going to be kind of slaying some of these foul elves right here. And man, I love the Mohawks. If I could grow a power Mohawk like that, I might be down, but I don't think I could. I definitely would be down for a beard like these Slayers have. That's pretty cool. But I grow like the worst facial hair on the planet. It's really depressing. Anyways, back to the main subject here. You can see that the Slayers and these Longbeards are going to be chasing down this Lord, doing their best, but the Dwarf Lord right here is definitely in a bit of a bad situation. I mean, he's very low and very vulnerable to cycle charging, and dragons do have really big mass, so they can usually push through these type of troops. You can see the Master Rune Negation going down, which is going to be providing that ward save, so definitely some very good timing, as it looks like the Wood Elf player is going to be going in, perhaps to try and get him, I'm not sure, but that Master Rune of Oath and Steel and the ward save is definitely going to help these Slayers and these Longbeards right here to kind of finish off these Eternal Guard, who do have 87 kills. Man, for the 475 or 450 that they cost, they are really paying their dues. So you can see some of these Slayers are settling their grudges right now, and it looks like the Wood Elf player is just kind of biding his time. He still does have a Branch Wraith up in the air, but the dragon is definitely going to be really hard to take down. Despite the fact that it only has 700 HP, it is a Glady, and it looks like it has a fairly healthy ammunition pool, so it can probably just sit up there and snipe out this Dwarf Lord. Even though like the Glady missile attacks don't have the heaviest armor piercing values, he's still going to be able to just sit up there and poke this guy down, so man, that is incredibly tough. So the Dwarves do have 16 Slayers right here. He does also have 32 Dragonback Slayers. So if the Dwarves have something going for him, it's definitely these guys. They're going to be very good against the big dragon. So rear charge coming in right there. You can see that, oh man, he just got run over by that Forest Dragon. So the Forest Dragon's probably going to pull back up in the air and maybe try and rally some of his troops. Looks like he does have 9 Eternal Guards over here. We're going to have a fateful showdown with these Quarrelers. I wonder who would actually win if the Quarrelers were to turn and fight and like charge them back. I feel like the Quarrelers might have a chance since these guys are so darn low. But it looks like they are going to get rear charged, and the charge bonus of those Eternal Guards, a mighty charge bonus of 6, is going to affect those guys, and they'll probably be able to break those Dwarves. So, in the main fight, you can see it's a bit of a cockfight over here between the Thane and this Branch Wraith right here. And the Thane's in pretty good health, but again, the cycle charging from the dragon, as well as that ammunition it has, and oh, that's so bad for the Dwarves. It looks like the Branch Wraith was able to finally save up enough Winds of Magic to get another Earthblood off. So this Glade Lord right here did heal for about 300 or 400 damage, which is going to be so bad. But the Dwarves still do have a lot of troops here, definitely some unbreakable Dragonback Slayers who are down to 25 models, and they should be able to cut up these Eternal Guards and, kind of push off the last of the infantry of the Wood Elves. So, let's go ahead and look over here. It looks like the Quarrelers are going to be running from these Eternal Guards. We're wavering, and I really think these guys will probably just like shatter off the battlefield once they get close to that Thane right there. But there are some Wood Elf troops rallying. You can see some Eternal Guard, and on that same note, let's go ahead and see if there's anything else. I don't think there's any other troops in the distance. I don't see it on the map, so looks like this is indeed the final showdown, guys. So the Dragonback Slayers right here, all 23 models are going to be just trying to karate kick and, karate chop these guys and do the best they can. It looks like he does pop the Tormentor Sword. I don't know if he was trying to get this Glade Lord right here. He might have been trying to pin down this Branch Wraith. But it does lower the melee attack by 26 as well. And you can see that the Dragonback Slayers are getting some attacks here and slowing the speed. So they have that speed debuff. So they did get a few attacks in, probably did about 150, maybe 200 damage to these guys. And they're still getting some decent little rear attacks, but it looks like the Glade Lord is able to get back in the air. So this Thane right here, man, he is just a beast. I mean, the 25 kills is definitely not representative of how well he's done. But he should be able to finish off the Branch Wraith. You know what? I'm actually pretty surprised. The Branch Wraith has 52 melee attack. That's actually really high. I would not have expected that. That's partially due to the Call of the Woods, but still, even with the -5 on that, he still has like 47 or 48, give or take, well, 47. But yeah, that's pretty good. So the Thane should be able to win though, because the Branch Wraith doesn't really have good armor piercing. It also has magic damage, so it's going to have the armor mitigation as well as the magic resist. But man, that rear charge from that Glade Lord, he's just such a menace, such a terror in the night. So he actually does terror out that Thane, who's not immune to psychology, surprisingly. So the Longbeards are, but I guess Thanes aren't. But the Slayers here are getting a pretty decent attack. You can see this guy did just take a hit of about 40 or 50 damage, 400 HP, he's down to 0 leadership, and man, what a close fight. Very well played to both players. The Wood Elf player is doing a great job, as well as the Dwarf player. You can see that this Thane is shattered due to army losses. Man, what a battle, guys. But it looks like the Glade Lord here is also broken. He has 39 HP. Oh, is this Hero Slayer? Oh man, that guy is the hero of the Dawi. That guy is going down in the halls of the ancestors. He's able to take that dragon. Look at the balance of power. So right now, guys, there's literally 9 Slayers versus Branch Wraith, and even though the balance of power is so heavily in the favor of the Wood Elves, it looks like the Dwarves still might be able to win because this guy is pretty squishy. He does have, well, actually he has 60 armor. I think they did get a buff to their armor. It used to be a bit lower if I'm not mistaken. Could have sworn it was at like 30, but he also does have that physical resist of 20%. So it's literally going to be 8 Dragonback Slayers versus Branch Wraith, who only has 800 HP. So we're going to go ahead and fast forward this, guys. So he's down to 4, 3, 2, 1, and oh man, he only has 600 HP. What a fight. Man, that was amazing. Really well played to the Salty Dwarf and Hazaslaga. That was a great community cast. Big thanks to the Salty Dwarf for sending that one over. I'm losing my voice. I'm so hyped, and that game was so long. Man, what a battle. But Dwarf Warriors and the Longbeards definitely performed pretty well. It was definitely a bit of an interesting tactic to see all the chevrons pumped into these guys, and they did very well against the Longbeards. Slayers were obviously the MVPs, and honestly, I've seen so many replays like back in the days of Total War Warhammer 1 when people would just mass Slayers and just like run over Wood Elf armies. It's pretty hilarious, but you know, again, the Hawk Riders would be pretty good because they could just kite the Slayers and just, you know, if you had done that, for example, and just kind of shoot them out of the air. And of course, a Glady would be pretty good there as well. But, you know, I think the Iron Drakes with the Trollhammer Torpedo were a bit of a risky pick, and they didn't really pay off. I mean, those 18 kills were probably against, like, Eternal Guard or whatever they could just get their paws on, because they were just getting constantly interrupted, just shot down with missiles. The Glady was focusing them and cycle charging them. And the Bolt Thrower is a bit of an interesting pick. I like it as kind of a meta pick against the Hawk Riders, but he did have a ton of artillery and didn't really have the resources to kind of adequately protect it. Because there was a Glade Lord, there was a Wild Riders, there was 2 groups of Hawk Riders, there was just so much pressure. So he didn't really have enough resources to protect those guys, but in the infantry fight, he definitely did very well. And the Quarrelers did take quite a bit of a beating, but they also traded effectively, were able to gun down the Way Watchers, get some good harass on these Hawk Riders, and also shoot at the Glade Lord. So very well played to Salty Dwarf and Hazaslaga. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that community cast. And guys, I got a lot more content coming soon.